you should all get a little announcement letting you know that I am recording this session. And David, I will monitor the chat box and I will monitor if any participants join us late, but I officially turn it over to you for SSI Part 2. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me and welcome everybody. This is our second session and this is my excitement session. I really like work incentives. So this really is going to focus on future planning for students or even future planning for somebody who has SSI. When we talk about work incentives for somebody who does want to go back to work or wants to experience work for the first time. Why is that not going? Some good news is obviously with the change of the calendar year, the rates for our benefits packages have changed. So for now, for 2024, the SSI, the federal benefit rate that we talked about in November, has increased and it's now $943. A married couple can now make up to $1,415. SEIE, which we'll talk about in today's session, has been also increased, and now a student can make up to 2,200 or $2,220 per month. We're totaling over $9,230 per year. So they can't go over that limit. For SSDI, which is covered in our next session, a non-blind disabled individual, their SGA limits now have increased to $1,550, and a blind individual's SGA limit has increased to $2,590, with a trial work incentive being increased to $1,110 a month. And that last line is going to sound like crazy because if you don't have SSDI, it really doesn't make any sense.
David, can I ask a quick question? Which you may
Yeah.
have said, what's SEIE?
So that is a work incentive that we're going to be covering.
Oh,
And
okay,
so
perfect.
so I don't pronounce it wrong. I'm looking at my other slides on my other computer so I can give you the right student earned income exclusion.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. So with that, we can move right into our slides. And overall, this is what we're going to be covering today. And it looks like a lot, but a lot of my slides are really kind of 1 to 2 word sentences, kind of lines where they're just going to give you some small information. And you can kind of, chew on it and really think about it. Petrea provided you guys with a tracking sheet that we're going to be using when we get to the past example. It'll also help you to understand where the general earned income, the GIE, and the EIE actually go into your breakdown if you're tracking it with your student, your child or yourself. So the first thing we're going to start on is section 1619B, which is a work incentive that helps protect Medicaid. This is a powerful work incentive if a person is on the verge or is losing their SSI eligibility for cash benefits due to a wage increase or going to work for the first time. And that threshold, as you know, is not very big. It's $943 as of the increase. So once you get over that, then that starts, getting threatened. This has been a permanent part of the SSI program since 1987. And as long as otherwise eligible for SSI, you can do this. So if you make those earnings and you're still eligible, you would still be eligible under the SSI determination. You're protected under this 1619B plan. And not every state has this. New York State does have this protection, so we are one of the states that fall under this plan. And it's very good to have. So wages must be below the year's threshold amount. Unfortunately, I don't have these new ones. But for an example, for 2023, it was $47,000 in Texas and $42,000 in North Carolina. I did have the New York stats, but I misplaced them when I did the slides, so I apologize for that. Or if the Medicare costs are extremely high and meets an individualized threshold. Continuing on, generally when calculating a month's SSI payments, the SSI program will disregard $20 of an earned income. If this disregard was not already used on an unearned income slot, which we'll talk about with our tracking sheet, then SSI will use it there. They also exclude up to $60 or $65 and 50% of what remains, which is all in the tracking sheet. So right now this sounds like a mystery, but we'll get into that. With a simple scenario, an individual will lose their SSI payment if their gross wages is higher than $1913 or higher in 2023. I do not have the 2024 break-even point, but that is what's called the break-even point. The break-even point is less if a person has unearned income, including Title II or in-kind support and maintenance, which we talked about last session as well. So how 1619B works, and this is the eligibility criteria. So this is Medicare tested by their means. So they've had it tested, scientists, whatever it may be, but they've had it tested. Unearned income must be within SSI limits. So obviously you can't have unearned incomes that would blow out your SSI limit. Then you would no longer be qualified for SSI. Resources must be within the SSI limits as well. Annual earned income must be below the state threshold amount in 2024. The Palms listed here is out of a straight red book that you can get from the Social Security Administration for free. It's literally their life book. They go by it. So the Palms that are indicated in the slide give you direct linkages to that red book to look up what the threshold amount might be. Or it must be under an individualized threshold limit as well. So individuals must continue to be disabled, and an individual who does not meet the above criteria will not qualify for 1619B. So this is a but for. So a but for is the earnings the individual qualifies for SSI. But if you take away those earnings and the individual still does not qualify for SSI, then 1619B does not qualify or does not apply. So for an example for this, an individual is receiving or was receiving $830 in Title II, which is SSDI benefits, and is working. But then the individual work causes an increase in Title II, which is an increase of more credits being recognized. And that caused an increase from $830 to $970. And due to this new work credit, that would eliminate ultimately the SSI, which means you're no longer viable for 1619B. But with that one, Title II benefits have Medicare and Medicaid protection as well, but those don't kick in for typically 48 months after you would be granted Title II. Example 2 is an individual gets married and a spouse income makes the individual ineligible for SSI. There would be no 1619B protection under this one as well. As an individual working, I hit the wrong button. That's the first time it works. So as an individualized work incentive, so 1619B is a work incentive for SSI beneficiaries only. So that means if you have Title II benefits, this work incentive does not cross over. So you can only get this if you have SSI. Since it is a work incentive, unearned income and resources cannot be protected. And since it is individualized, other people's earnings that impact SSI cannot be protected. An example of this is an SSI couple and the wife works, husband does not. Her work causes SSI to go away or go to zero. She is protected because she's working and she still has SSI, but her income and deem that her husband is no longer protected because she's making too much. There is a problem with it, and the basic problem is that is only really available to former SSI beneficiaries or beneficiaries of SSI. It's not available if a former beneficiary lets income or resources go over the SSI limit, or if somebody else's income makes the SSI beneficiary ineligible. And a possible fix is to access services through a state buy-in program if available. Our last session, we did talk about the impact of income on SSI. For this session, it's just a brief review of it. So SSI, as we talked about last session, is a needs-based and is significantly affected by a person's earned and unearned income. To calculate a person's monthly SSI payment, we begin with gross income and determine total countable. And then deductions and exclusions from income will result in total countable income. And a lot of this is going to sound like a mystery. It's just going to sound like mishmash, but once we get the tracking sheet, if you have it in front of you, it probably will start making sense. But once we actually start using it, it'll make a lot more sense. The general income inclusion rule, which is GIE, and how it's used. So SSA does not consider all income when calculating a person's total countable income. There is a $20 general income exclusion, which is called GEI, and is typically applied during the unearned income portion of this. You can use it later on, but typically it happens with unearned income because it's the first one that shows up. All other exclusions apply to earned income. So that's GIE. They're pretty simple. It's pretty simple. It's a $20 deduction. Earned income exclusion, which is EIE. This is a $65 earned income exclusion plus 1/2 of the remainder is deducted from the gross earned income. Other work incentives can also reduce the total countable earned income, and the remainder is the total countable earned income for SSI budget purposes. So this is the one that I like the most. So this is a student earned income exclusion. And that this is called SEIE, and SEIE allows a significant amount of monthly annual income to be excluded for the purposes of determining a monthly SSI award. And what this means is a student can go to work, they can work part-time hours, full-time hours, they can earn up to a certain amount, which we'll talk about. And that's ultimately protected so that way they can still earn money, go to school, and still collect their benefits. So a student is defined as an individual regularly attending school as defined by the regulation. It has to be under the age of 22. How to apply for SEIE? It excludes up to $2,200 or $2,220 of earned income per month of an individual's under the age of 22 who regularly attends school as defined by the regulations and has a maximum of $9,230 in the year of 2024. The exclusion is applied before any other income exclusion. So when it says how to apply that, that means for the tracking sheet, and we'll go over that as well.
David, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah,
Oh, wait, go to the
sorry,
next
go for it.
slide.
I'm sorry.
No, your next slide might answer my question. Does it
Okay.
tell you what defines a school? Yep, never mind. That's my next question. Thank
Yep.
you.
Mm-hmm. So what do I mean by regularly attending school? Well, this is the breakdown for it. So a student takes one or more courses of study and attends classes in a college or university for up to 8 hours a week, or in 7th to 12th grade for 12 hours a week. They could be in a training course to be preparing for employment for 12 hours a week or 15 hours per week if the courses involve the shop kind of practice. And that could be carpentry, electric, any trade skills for less time than indicated above for any reason beyond the student's control, such as illness. So if a child can't maintain schoolwork because of an illness and they have to medical issues or things like that, there is an exemption where they can particularly get SEIE as well. There is a rule for attending from home. So regularly attending school from home. For a student who must stay at home because of a disability, regularly attending school is defined as studying a course or courses given by a school, grades 7 through 12, college, university, on site or online, or a government agency, and having a home visitor or tutor who directs the study. An example of an SEI running tally. So a student earning $975 in a month is entitled to SEIE of up to $2,220 per month with a total of $9,230 in a calendar year. After deducting the $975, the student will have $8,255 left to use in the remaining calendar year or calendar months for 2024. And recording a running tally of this amount will help keep the student informed of how much of the SEIE remains. So for the whole calendar year, as long as the student is obviously in school as defined, they can work. And typically we see this in summer months and during those long school breaks during the winter, where a student can really free up some time. They might not be attending classes regularly. They might not be involved in school functions. And they can go put in, a full-time shift during those closed down hours. We see that's where that 200 or $2,220 really plays is during those months. We have seen students who work throughout the year and don't really, reach thresholds that we have to worry about, but it is trackable and it is manageable. And as long as the student and the rep payee maybe is aware of it, then they can track it and make sure that nothing's being gone over. Our next thing that we have for a topic is called impairment work-related expenses. And we define these as IRWIs. I love the name of them, IRWIs. And IRWIs in the SSI program are defined the same way as they are in the Title II program. For you or for that explanation is the SSDI slides actually come before this when you're taking the accreditation course, so that's why it's broken up that way. The IRWIs enable SSI beneficiaries to recover 50% of a work-related cost or expense incurred as a result of their impairment. And deducting the IRWI reduces countable income and increases the SSI cash payment. And there is a slot on there on that tracking sheet that we'll be visiting here in a little bit that has IRWIs in there. The example I have does not use IRWIs, but if you end up, if you're a student or end up using an IRWI, there is a slot in there that would take that out of your calculation. IRWI details, so an impairment related item and services. Did I skip something there? That's it. I felt like there was more. I apologize. I thought there was more there. So IRWI's details, so impairment related items and services that are needed for work. So that's the definition of it. That it's going to be an item and service that need to be used for work. And it's deducted from the gross earnings, even if the items and services are also needed for everyday or non-work activities. And this will fall under the same criteria as the Title II program. IRWI criteria. So expenses must be directly related to one or more impairments for which the beneficiary receives medical treatment. Noise canceling headphones. I've worked with a lot of customers writing IRWIs for noise canceling headphones. That is one that seems to be a very common one nowadays. Beneficiaries must need the item to work, so they need it for the item to service work. Cost must be paid by the beneficiary and is not reimbursable from any other source. So that means they have to buy for it out of their SSI or their funds, and they can't be reimbursable. So work can't give them back the $60 because they bought it first, or mom, dad can't give them $60 because they bought it first. The SSI beneficiary has to pay for it. The expense must have been paid in the month in which the beneficiary works. So if they know coming in from February to March, they know in March they need noise canceling headphones, they would purchase those on March 1st. They would obviously have the IRWI submitted to the SSA administration, have it approved. So that way they know it's coming. It might be $60, might be $70, but they'll have the amount there. And then the expenses must be reasonable. So if you have health insurance and they cover certain items and it reduces the cost, they don't want you paying full price for it. What counts as an IRWI? So there is a PALMS that provides examples of IRWIs, and I apologize, I meant to pull it off the other slide. I will send that to Patrea, so that way you guys have it if you do have the red book. The list is not all inclusive, so it won't give you exactly everything. It should not limit a beneficiary from claiming an unlisted expense. If you believe it could be an expense, you should definitely talk with a disability resource coordinator or talk with the SSA and submit it and see if they will approve it. With the proper documentation, many disability related expenses can be claimed as an IRWI. And most of the time it's a simple conversation with your doctor, your pediatrician, whatever you may need. It's pretty easy to get the documentation that is required. Here are some examples. Sorry. Here are some examples of IRWI. So work-related equipment and assistance, attended care services, employment supported services. So these things covers job coaches, transportation costs if they are impairment related, co-pays and over-the-counter medications, durable medical equipment, and residential modifications. So if you need a ramp, you need other things put in your house, these things will cover that as well. Blind work expenses. So this is for an individual who is blind. For SSI beneficiaries whose primary diagnosis is blindness and who have an earned income, SSA will exclude ordinary and necessary expenses attributed to the earnings of that income. A difference between the IRWI and the blind work expense is that the relationship to the impairment is not required for an expense for the blind work expense program. Furthermore, the blind work expense is only for SSI work recipients as well. How this will impact total countable income. So the Blind work expense, I don't know why it's giving me such a hard time, is recuperated by 100%. So this actually falls on our tracking sheet under the division of two. In reality, what we've learned about this is that they had a lot better, I can't think of the word. They had a lot better lobbying going on for blind advocacy during the time. So they got more of kind of the better draw of it. um, Blind work expenses must be reasonable and may include these things. So they'll include guide dogs, free professional associations and union dues, transportation to and from work, training to use items or programs reasonably related to work, taxes withheld from paychecks, work-related equipment services. These will be visual aids, non-medical equipment, uniforms, childcare, meals consumed during work hours, mandatory pension contributions, drugs, medical services, medical supplies, and attendant. Okay, so I have to pull up another sheet real quick, and I have to see if you guys will be able to see this. I just got to get my slides planned here. So now we're gonna use the tracking sheet if you have it. I'm gonna actually pull it up on mine because I have the slides on a different computer. So I'm gonna read the same slides I have here on a different computer, and I'm gonna do the tracking sheet so you can see how it's done from my end. And then if you have questions or if you want to practice with your own income later, you're always capable of doing that. And if you have questions about it, you can always shoot me an email. Just give me 1 second while I line my slides up here. No, one. Okay, so we're right here. So give me 1 second. Let me stop sharing so I can pull up my other thing here.
While you're doing that, David, does anybody have any questions for David before he shows the example? Figured I'd ask that while you're getting your slides up and going, or your tracking sheet, sorry.
I hope this works great. Okay, can you see that?
I can see it. I think everybody else should be able to see it.
When I type in it, can you see it?
I can.
Oh, this is awesome. Okay. So the next thing we're discussing is PASS, and which is called a plan to achieve self-support, or PASS. With the PASS SSI work incentive, beneficiaries with a disability can set aside income earned under deemed or any in kind and or resources to be used to achieve specific work-related goals. A PASS can be established to cover the cost of obtaining an education, receiving vocational training, starting a new business, or purchasing support services. The options are almost limitless. A little bit more about PASS. PASS is a special SSI rule for not counting income or resources that support a work goal. If approved, because it does have to be approved by the Social Security Administration, but if it's approved, a PASS can result in retaining SSI eligibility, a larger SSI payment, SSI eligibility when none existed before, and establishing or maintaining Medicare or Medicaid eligibility. So we're going to talk about Joan, and Joan is going to have a PASS. I'm going to do two examples. She's going to do a non-PASS example, and then she's going to have a PASS. And when we talk about her PASS, we're going to talk about her PASS as it's helping her pay for her college. So first off, you need a little bit of background information about Joan. So understanding Joan. So Joan is aged 33. She lives alone, and she receives both SSDI and SSI. And her SSDI is $680 per month. So when we look at that, and we look at having a dual system, SSDI for SSI calculation sheets are always counted as an unearned income source. So this was automatically the first unearned income source we read of is $680 per month. SSI disregards $20 of this $680. So with that, right now, she stands at $660 of unearned income. So countable unearned income. 1 second. I just got to catch up to where I am here. So right now, none of this is going to really apply to her. So we're going to skip all of this. She has no gross income, which means she's not working. She has not applied for the student earned income yet. GEI we used above. We can put in here the $65 reduction, but that would go down, end up going down here because there's nothing really to take away from here. Give me 1 second. So Joan's total monthly income is actually $934 because she gets SSI. So what that means is if we look down here, her adjusted payment because of her thing, she's gonna get $254 because she can only make 934. If we go back up to here, we have the 680 with the minus with the exclusion. So since then that will put us here, which is our total. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. There it is. I'm sorry. 254 here. She does not have her past deduction yet, and this ultimate ranges at $234 or $934. Why is that not working? Oh, I know why, because I did that wrong. I apologize. I am all over the place right now. So her earned income has to be. Why is that not showing me right? Sorry. Yeah, so we did skip that. We skipped that. That's nothing there. 660, we were right there. But they didn't show this part. So they showed you the minus here. And ultimately it gave out to this figure. So this means this is how much she's getting. And it divides the SSI, which is the SSI is 254. She can't make over $934 with SSI. So the SSDI covers the 660. I know that was a little confusing. I thought that would have went a little bit smoother for that one. But now we're going to include the pass. So the pass will help make a little bit of sense. So if income or resources are used in a pass to support a work goal, the income and resources will not be counted when determining SSI eligibility. So Joan has her pass approved, and she plans to attend a 2-year community college program to become an occupational therapist assistant. The plan includes a state VR, which will pay for tuition, transportation to college, and her books. And Joan will still need $700 for a laptop, $10,800 for a used car and travel to work, and $660 or $650 for 6 months for car insurance. Joan proposes to set aside $450 of her SSDI check each month for 27 months to save these items to meet her work goal. So we'll go back up here and we're going to leave this the same. 680 minus the general inclusion minus the 660. Or gets us to 660. I'm sorry. We have nothing in this category. I don't know why this amount's there, but we have nothing in this category. When we go to her pass or step three, we're looking at 660, which is in the countable. The pass deduction, which was $450 a month. Get rid of this real quick, which came out to 210. Her base rate is 934. And you can see where the 210 automatically went into that. Or on my sheet, it goes automatically into it. I apologize. And this ultimately makes it so her SSI adjusted becomes $704 for the month. So this is what she'll get now in SSI payment because of the adjustment here. Because now she's putting away 210 or $450, I'm sorry, up here out of her SSDI. The benefit rate being $934, the total income minus 210, 704 is what her adjusted rate for her SSI would be. With her pass approved, SSI no longer counts that $450 for Joan's SSDI. The countable income is reduced by $210, and the SSI check is increased to $704. So originally it was lighter. Through her first example, she was only making $254 from SSI. With the pass taking $450 out, it increased her income by that amount. for her SSI payment. I just gotta line my slides back up again. So the countable income was reduced to $210. Her SSI check was increased to $704, and her past savings equaled 1,200. Yeah, 1,200 or $12,157, which is 27 months at $450. And saving will pay for her computer, her car, and her insurance for the time frame that she had planned. The time frame, so her pass would begin for her example, her pass began in July of 2023 and goes through August of 2025. She could buy a car and insure it in August of 2025. And until then, she will borrow her mom's car to travel into it. So that was more of like a troubleshooting for that one. And her plan is ultimately to graduate in May of 2025. So Jones still has $934 for living expenses, which ultimately would be the $704 plus the $230 from SSDI. I'm going to do a better example with this too, because I want you guys to see the exclusion as well. So I'm going to ask for a little participation, and it's more for numbers. So don't throw erratic numbers out. Let's keep it a little bit reined. But I'm gonna ask. We'll do an example without SSDI just for sake. So we're gonna say that the person we're gonna talk about right now does not have any unearned income, which means they're not receiving vacation time. They didn't take any sick time. They're not getting any outside benefits other than SSI. To show you how the gross income and how the calculation sheet really works, ultimately, if we don't, this is going to be zero up top here because we're not going to claim any unearned income. We're going to say right now, because we're going to have a student involved, we're going to say this month they made $950. We do know that the student earned income inclusion allows us to remove up to, actually what we'll say, yeah, it allows us to remove up to $2,220. So with this exclusion, we can actually take this away, giving us a remainder of zero. That was not a very good example. Let's do it this way. Let's do 3,500 because then we can show you the example better. So we know we're going to max that out, and we're going to give you the reminder or the remainder, the reminder. Zero. I got to do math, and I don't have a calculator in front of me, and I don't want to do it on my fingers.
Hold on, I have a calculator. I can't do math.
I would have normally done it, but now I'm a little panicky.
Hold on. 3,500 minus $2,220 gives you a remainder of $1,280.
Okay, so 1,280 is what we're going to say the student is sitting at right now. Because there was no unearned income to report out, the GIA is actually going to be placed down here because you can see if it's not noted, we have to use it. This is a $20 reduction. For some reason on my sheet, they don't work that way, so we'll put the 60 here. The EIE for this is 65. Now we got to do math again because math is, runs my life. 12, 60, 65. Which brings us to 1,195. For this example, we're not going to use any IRWIs for this, but we'll take that 1,195 and we'll divide that by 2. And I did that wrong on my calculator because why wouldn't I? Divide that by 2 brings us out to $597.5. Non-blind individual, and then we're going to say 597.5. So this is if your student has made this much money and has the student earned income exclusion. I've never seen numbers that high. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I've never seen numbers that high, but it is possible. For this example, this individual does not have a pass. So their total countable income for the month, for what SSI is going to take into consideration, is $597.50. And you can see that started at $3,500, and now we're only seeing $597. Since we know the federal benefit rate is $934 this year with the adjusted rate, The adjusted rate is $336.20. And ultimately, what this means is that that's what's going to be removed from the SSI check. So when you do all this, when we do this, we try to show people the increase. So the adjusted earned income above is 0. You can see here that this was 35, right? Gross earned income. Yeah, this was 35. Yep, 3,500. No pass, none of that. We did have an offset, no contributes, nothing there. Which means ultimately your student made that much money for that month. So they're still going to get an SSI check of $336.20. But ultimately throughout the month, they made $3,836.20. So you can show the student, even with tracking, that if they are working, that yes, your benefits might be affected to this point where they might be reduced down because of the work income, but you can show them at the bottom, hey, you made this much money this month because of the work you put in and everything that you're doing. And those cover the work incentives to that portion. So when we get back on track here, just for the last portion of it, the pass. So there is a pass policy that is required. So if SSI is received before pass is approved, the work goal must be significantly reduce the SSI payment amount. If only the SSDI is received before pass is approved, the work goal must be expected to eliminate the SSDI check. So ultimately what that means is that the work goals are planning to assist your student or yourself to really get work towards financial independence or to get a career path that will expand options for us. I'm gonna bring that back up real quick before I forget because I don't need my tracking sheet anymore. I do have other examples if you would like to practice other examples. I do have other ones. The past example I thought would have been a little bit better, to be honest with you, but it didn't go that smoothly, but that's okay. Now I just got to catch up to where we are. Just did that. So if we analyze Jones' goal, her goal is making as a job making $22,000 a year or $18,300 per month upon her graduation. She meets the first criteria as this would if she meets the first criteria as this would eliminate her SSI eligibility. If SSDI were her only income before pass approved, she would meet the criteria as she would earn more than 1470, which was last year's rate, for the work incentive that protects SSDI coverage. Now my scroll button's not working. Pass suspensions, terminations, and problems. So a pass can be suspended when any of the following occur. The plan is overall abandoned. The conditions that were laid forth in the plan are not followed through, or a medical condition prevents participation or continued participation. A pass will be terminated if any of the following occur. Eligibility for SSI is terminated. 12 consecutive months lapse after pass is suspended without it being resumed, and a vocational goal or an employment goal is achieved. A stumbling block for pass is for SSDI recipients who want to submit for a pass. SSA now requires that they first apply for SSI benefits and have to be found eligible for those benefits. SSA offices will not be allowed to adopt the SSDI decision for SSI purposes. However, the Disability Determination Service will be allowed to review the claim and adopt the SSDI disability determination for SSI purposes where appropriate. And if the SSI claimed is denied, a new continuing disability review or CDR may begin on the SSDI disability claim, and SSDI will not be directly impacted by the SSI denial if denied. Why is that not working all of a sudden? This is a website developed by Cornell University's Yang Tang Institute. It helps people understand how to apply for passes more thoroughly. You will get these slides, so you'll be able to have that link, but it's pretty simple. And I've been on the website plenty of times. It's very you can navigate it fairly easily. And there's a lot of good information that I might not have presented on past there. And then there's my contact information, and I will open it for questions.
Thank you, David. I will unspotlight you so that everybody can see everybody else, or not, because it's not letting me. So I can see people's names up at the top. So I'm assuming they can, there we go. I figured it out. They can see everybody. Oh, and my video's off because I must have clicked it at some point. So does anybody have any questions for David? And the good news is what David just mentioned is we are able to share the slides. So I will be sending out the slides from this session and last session, correct, David?
Yep.
Once you send them to me. So woo woo, we can get those slides and kind of go back over it because it's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information that's fairly, there's no entertainment factor. I can't wave flags around, it's very dry, unfortunately. And it can be confusing because it's hard material as it is, and to teach it and while learning it and continuously learning it because things change. It's very difficult. So I thank you guys for bearing with me during my stumbling and mistakes I make.
Yeah. Well, any questions for David? I feel like I hear crickets.
The brains exploded. There's so much
Yeah.
information.
That's like, I'm glad you got permission to share the slides because I want to go back over them. And you can
Yeah,
always email questions to you, correct?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
And
the tracking sheet really is it's fairly self-explanatory. It has everything on there, where it would go, what it means. And when you have the slides, the first slides for SSI overview give you all the resources that are countable. So if you're worried about, is this an unearned income, is this an earned income, it is there. But if you have specific questions, you're just not sure, you can't find the information, call me, email me. Yeah, I'll answer anything.
in our next session, if nobody has any questions, and I will keep watching for them. Our next session, of course, I don't have that information directly in front of us, is we will be meeting on February 29th to do SSDI, correct? Do I have that correct?
Yes, you
Um,
do.
so we will send out links to everybody who was on the call today. And for those of you, while you're formulating questions, I'll self-plug some of my other sessions. I am also doing some information on self-advocacy. So February 1st, I'm doing one on how to help your child become their own best advocate. So as I call that, cutting the apron strings and letting them speak up, which is really hard for us parents who might be involved in school systems where you do a lot of advocating for your child. And then as they're transitioning to adulthood, they have to take that over. And we are doing another session later on in the month on guardianship versus supportive decision making. And I am hoping tomorrow to announce we are going to be restarting our therapeutic crisis intervention for families series. We did it in the fall, and we had 6 families who joined us. We are scheduled to start next Thursday, but I'm waiting for the flyer to be approved. So I feel like I might have to adjust some dates there. But it's a great series on just dealing with maybe difficult behaviors that your child might have and how to react as a parent, guardian, or other supportive person in that child's life. So once I get that flyer, I will be sending that out. And then finally, I just added a date in April. If anybody knows anybody who's thinking about going for a civil service job, what are some of the exemptions that you can get if you have a disability? So that is going to be on April 11th and all of these are at 7 o'clock on Thursdays if you're curious. Either on Zoom or in person. That one's going to be on Zoom. And that's a new one in my calendar of events, and I'm excited for that one because I actually didn't know until very recently that there were exemptions. So everybody had to take that darn civil service exam. So I'm excited to share that with people. So that's everything I've got. And by the way, I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning because I just assumed everybody was on the last call, but I'm Patria Ray from BOCES. So any questions before we end this call? And I give you 10 minutes back to your evening. No questions? Okay. Well, I thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please let David or I know. I will send a follow-up email afterwards with David's contact information and the PowerPoints once I receive them. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Have a good night.